Africa, you cannot fail to smile because of the smile that fills the faces of the citizens. Our nice good weather and nature that sustains us all, that enables us all to continue each in their own way, because we are all different even according to each individual's work. But what joins us to become one person is the sweetness from the flavored drink Alleluia Jingati drink and Alleluia Tamarind drink. The flavor that quenches your thirst while at the same time treating and healing your body, because it is 100% natural. Enjoy the drink that has got the tamarind juice in it. Made by Alleluia Reflexology, Healthy Solutions and Nutritional Research Center Limited. Get yourself a bottle of Alleluia from all shops around.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala. This is Good Morning Uganda. Live from UBC Studios in Kampala. This is Good Morning Uganda.
Well, good morning, Uganda. Well, it is quite a cool one and, of course, rainy across Kampala and a few areas, that is parts of Wakiso and Tebe. And we thank you so much for joining us amidst all this coldness. Of course, here to take you through the morning, I do have a team with me. My name is Mollen, Kenyena. And we'll be looking at what is happening across the country and, of course, going beyond, and obviously find a way to make sure that we're able to, start with you this morning and probably put a smile on your face. That is what we're aiming at. Just 7 days to the end of the month. And by end of the month, I mean also mid-year. Well, if you're one of those people that usually set goals or call them resolutions, I think, for the year, and you had something planned for the first half of the year, you just have a few days to find out. Probably you could take this time to review and see how far you come, or whether there is something you again have to postpone into the next half, which also might not be very far, because the moment you click in June like this, there's where days start to move, and before you know it, it's already end of the year. So we do hope that we keep to inspire you to do some of those things that you've set yourself up to do, and obviously be successful at those. But still, talking about a cold and rainy one, we recently had, extremities along Masaka region where a lot of residents were affected, but also cutting off the Kampala-Masaka sub-region. Now, the president of Uganda has been in Masaka, and of course he did empathize with the people in Masaka, especially because of the crisis that befell their road, and of course being cut off from the main highway, cut off from Kampala. And of course this is not just people in Masaka, but also beyond, the people that have been using that road. That was after a heavy downpour across the area, causing River Katonga to burst its banks, and of course the water had to overflow and sweeping off parts of the road. Well, there are also a lot of extremities happening across the country, and we're seeing that the president is really paying attention, saying that this is something that should be addressed and to make sure that Ugandans are safe amidst all these extreme weather events. But also looking at what is happening, I think the crisis is not over when it comes to the expired degrees. Now, yesterday we did see administration coming up in terms of the students' body, that is the UNSA, coming up to say, no, we are not going to allow this. First of all, every year we have been paying about 20,000 shillings towards this Uganda Council of Higher Education. Now, how do they tell us that they didn't even have funding to actually do some of these processes? That was from also the guild president of Makerere University as well as Chambogo University, saying we need explanations, and they have given them up to 14 days to come up with the answers, and that is from the Council of Higher Education, saying we need answers, we need to make sure that this process is reviewed, and probably an update on that list, because they don't believe that all these programs are actually expired. Well, a lot to dissect this morning, but I'll bring in the gentlemen here to see what they have also been concerned about and what they are keeping an eye on when it comes to what is happening across this country. I'll start with you, Robert. Good morning.
Oh, good morning, Lady in Black. How are you?
I am all right.
Well, is it good news? Are you just putting on black? Or, Uganda people die day in, day out. All these anything to do with...
Don't even joke about death. But black is one of my favorite colors. Okay. So yeah, just that.
Can you just imagine how we were brainwashed to associate black to evil, black to death? Yet actually we are black ourselves. It's very amazing. But talking about what is happening in Uganda, Felix, Mollen, and our viewers, one thing I've come to know is that many people are sleeping on job. Many people are sleeping on job. Talk about the National Council of Higher Education, talk about what Makerere had to say and all that. But police came out and closed private security companies that some were not registered, others were not meeting standards. But imagine, some of these have been operating for many years. These have been having weapons. It is after we are seeing this kind of sporadic shootings here and here of private security guards. And my question was that how did these people then have been carrying on business, and these are not selling chicken feed. These are not selling scholastic materials. These are people who are given guns to protect others. They have been around, the regulatory body has not been serious to identify them, that no, these don't meet standards, these are not registered, these have issues, not until a calamity befalls us. And then we wake up and we're like, oh, now we need to be more proactive. This surgical operations, what has happened? Let's hurry, let's do this, let's do this. That is one of the things, as a person who is so passionate about security, that really disturbed me, thinking here and there. I may understand when someone talks about maybe substandard goods, but a person who is going to handle a gun, a whole institution that you say maybe Kirabo, Mollen, Felix security group, and we have maybe about 30, 40 guns with us, I mean, how do you wake up and say, these people want to know, these people want to register, this people want meeting? No, I feel that is something very disturbing.
Yeah, indeed, because I did hear some, that is remarks from, that is Afande Paulina Maye from the operations departments in police, saying that they have actually put out measures now, and one of those is mandatory training for the security organizations. And I think even 39 of them, she said, were pending, I think, suspension. So there are a lot of things that they need to clear for them to have the license to operate. Now, all this is, in an effort to make sure that we have the quality training that they need to be sure that they are able to handle the gun. And of course, most of those what we also expect to make sure to avoid some of these instances that are happening across the country. We do hope that the security organizations will take that on and hear the call from Uganda Police to ensure safe and secure operations. Felix, what are you keeping an eye on this morning? Good morning to you.
Well, good morning.
Yes.
I hope you're well.
Yeah, I am.
Robert did talk about your black, and probably it is important to tell him that the complexion of your color does match well colors that are a bit darker, like brown and black.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, so the reason why people like Robert will find it futile because of his color complexion.
So fashionista, what much?
He associated it with sad instances immediately.
No, it has nothing to do with that. But of course, he does give the tale of what we have been made to believe, sadly, But definitely, color complexion says a lot about the kind of clothes you can wear. Actually, it wouldn't be very nice for Mollen to put on a white, totally white attire because of her that light skin. But you, the dark man, you can put on white and you'll come out. Good. Lots of things are happening in the country.
Now, Robert, you have tips. You have fashion tips from Felix this morning. Take them.
Many things are happening. I've also heard that we may be hosting the African Cup of Nations as East Africa. I don't know how true that will be. But also, the people of Masaka are still cut off. Sadly, some of our pilgrims got stuck at the Katonga area, where they cannot, so people already started moving. You talked about Uganda Matters. There's a team that is coming from Masaka, Kabale, Mbala, Kisoro. Last time on Sunday, I did my prayers at Namugongo, and I noticed people from the north had already arrived. Actually, if you go there now, you'll struggle with accessing the shrine and, of course, the downer part where there's the lake. But we do pray for every person making the pilgrim. The beauty is that the rains had stopped a bit because they are quite disturbing. Last time Mollen asked, I remember a question, I don't know, she asked a question about if any of us had ever done that. I have done the pilgrim thing. I have walked to Namugongo, though not from a very far place.
From Rubaga?
Yes, I did walk from Rubaga, but it was a beautiful experience. And I think not once, we did it a couple of times with my grandmother. So, but you know what happens when you're walking? You walk while singing. Then you recite the rosary. Then there are some stops, like along the way, I think if you're passing via Ntinda, there are different stopovers for different, there's some history for the various matters. Like, for example, Andere Akagwa, around Ndere area, there's a church, Chigowa, I think it's called Chigowa, Saint Andre Akagwa. You stop there. Then where else? I think for those coming from the side of Munyonyo, there's a shrine also. It has some history. But of course, as you approach, there's a lot of history along Namugongo. Then when you go down to the Anglican side, there's a well where Mukajanga used to wash his swords, and he used to have a palace there where he used to do a lot of, I think, manslaughter. So they used to call it. Yeah, it's quite a beautiful story. For some of you who are walking, you get to appreciate these things when you meet at various points. Some people who are passing the side of Chibuye, Kabowa, Chitebi. There's another place there where we have, I think, one of the martyrs also who used to reside there. Then as you approach Nalukolongo, somewhere where you have Bakateyamba, there's something also there to do with. Then I think that's a place where... Yes, that's why it's called Setibali Kudembe, was a matter. Yeah. So people who move, depending on which route you're using, there's history that is aligned to... When you reach Namugongo,
quite a lot actually, for a lot of places.
But have you been to the shrine itself, the Namugongo Church, the basilica itself? When you enter inside, where there is the altar, I don't know how it's called in English, altar. Yeah, somewhere there. So some good history. So for some of you who are doing the pilgrims, take time to appreciate these and ask about the prayers you do to get the ultimate indulgence, whether on earth or in heaven.
We all
so I don't know if you'll be going to Namugongo, Mollen, or Robert,
right,
but you should start gearing up. It's next week.
And I know there's a lot of preparations going on.
I can't miss.
And of course, seeing the pilgrims on their way, it also actually should be tempting some of the people living around. It's a short distance, you can easily move to Namugongo and join everyone
business.
For celebration. This is not a day for business, but well, we also want to take you through some of the stories that are making headlines locally and internationally. Felix and Robert here will be taking us through the local stories. Robert.
We begin with His Excellency President Yoweri Museveni, who is in Greater Masaka for a wealth creation tour to look at what is going on there. Has appreciated the people of Greater Masaka for embracing his wealth creation gospel by engaging in commercial agriculture. President Museveni is currently on an investment and wealth creation tour in Greater Masaka under the theme Securing Your Future Through Wealth Creation and Shared Prosperity. The president was happy to learn that the people of Masaka are among the many that grasped his wealth creation gospel, equating them to a story in the Bible, the parable of the sower in the book of Matthew, where seeds that fell on fertile grounds germinated, while those that fell on barren ground could not make it.
Now, the Deputy Speaker of Parliament, Thomas Tayewa, has tasked the Ministry of Education and Sports to present a statement on the alleged expiry of degrees and diplomas in several institutions of learning across the country. The declaration of some degrees and diplomas awarded by Ugandan institutions of higher education and learning, tertiary institutions, did expire by UK's leading international clarification body of academic credentials, the University of Cambridge, that holds a Memorandum of Understanding with Uganda National Council of Higher Education. The declaration of expired academic documents and courses is a possession of some Ugandans that raise mixed reactions, with Makerere University accusing the Uganda National Council of Higher Education failing to update its website with vital information about the expired degrees and diploma courses.
Moving on, the Parliament report on alleged mismanagement of relief items under the Office of the Prime Minister meant for the people of Karamoja sub-region was caught offside and outside of the law. Following the presentation by the chairperson of the Parliamentary Presidential Affairs Committee, Jessica Ababiku, the report has been put aside in respect to sub judice rule. Nevertheless, the findings of the committee hit hard on the beneficiaries of the Karamoja diverted iron sheets.
Now, the body of Private Sabit Wilson, a UPDF officer who shot himself dead, and the Minister of Labour, Industrial Relations, retired Colonel Charles Ngola, has been laid to rest at his ancestral home in Mubali Village, Kijura Town Council, Kabarole District. The body was transported home last evening in UPDF van for a decent burial by his family 3 weeks after his demise.
Crossing borders, the U.S. has distanced itself from an incursion into Russia, which Moscow says ended in defeats of armed insurgents who entered from Ukraine. Parts of the border region of Belgorod came under attack on Monday in one of the most major cross-border raids since Russia invaded its neighbors last year. Russia later released pictures of the abandoned and damaged Western military vehicles, including US-made Humvees. The US insisted it did not encourage or enable strikes inside of Russia. And in another story, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, who impersonated battles over pandemic lockdowns and divisive cultural issues, has endeared him to conservatives, will announce on Wednesday that he is seeking the Republican presidential nomination, placing him on a collision course with former President Donald Trump. DeSantis will make the announcement on Twitter during a discussion with Twitter CEO Elon Musk. DeSantis political team confirmed. Now, at the same time, he will file a document with the Federal Electoral Commission declaring his candidacy. Musk confirmed his appearance on a webcast during a conference hosted by Wall Street Journal. And in Sudan, artillery fire could be heard in parts of Khartoum, and warplanes flew overhead on Tuesday, as residents say. Though an internationally monitored ceasefire appeared to have brought some peace. That is from heavy fighting in Sudanese capital, night airstrikes were reported in at least one of the areas after the ceasefire started late on Monday, but residents otherwise reported relative calm. The truce was agreed at talks in Jeddah on Saturday after 5 weeks of fierce battles between the army and the paramilitary rapid support forces. Now in climate news, scientists suffering insults and mass spam are abandoning Twitter for alternative social networks as hostile climate change denial surges on the platform following Elon Musk's takeover. Researchers have documented on an explosion of hate and misinformation on Twitter since the Tesla billionaire took over in October 2020, and now experts saying that communicating about climate science on social network, on which many of them rely, is getting harder. Well, of course, a lot of stories happening, and later on we'll also be looking at what is making headlines in our dailies, that is in print media. But for now, we also want to take you through an inspirational song of the day, just to get you started for this morning. And when we get back, we'll have a topical discussion in Good Morning Uganda newsreel. Later on, we'll also be taking you through traffic updates, into the weather, and then we'll also be getting into Good Morning Uganda agenda. Later than that, we'll also be giving you sports and, of course, moving us into Good Morning Uganda Extra. For now, we'll take a short break. When we get back, we look into the newsreel. Good morning.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala. This is Good Morning Uganda. Live from UBC Studios in Kampala. This is Good Morning Uganda.
Well, good morning, Uganda. Well, it is quite a cool one and, of course, rainy across Kampala and a few areas, that is parts of Wakiso and Tebe. And we thank you so much for joining us amidst all this coldness. Of course, here to take you through the morning, I do have a team with me. My name is Mollen, Kenyena. And we'll be looking at what is happening across the country and, of course, going beyond, and obviously find a way to make sure that we're able to, start with you this morning and probably put a smile on your face. That is what we're aiming at. Just 7 days to the end of the month. And by end of the month, I mean also mid-year. Well, if you're one of those people that usually set goals or call them resolutions, I think, for the year, and you had something planned for the first half of the year, you just have a few days to find out. Probably you could take this time to review and see how far you come, or whether there is something you again have to postpone into the next half, which also might not be very far, because the moment you click in June like this, there's where days start to move, and before you know it, it's already end of the year. So we do hope that we keep to inspire you to do some of those things that you've set yourself up to do, and obviously be successful at those. But still, talking about a cold and rainy one, we recently had, extremities along Mastiko region where a lot of residents were affected, but also cutting off the Kampala-Masaka sub-region. Now, the president of Uganda has been in Mastiko, and of course he did empathize with the people in Mastiko, especially because of the crisis that befell their road, and of course being cut off from the main highway, or cut off from Kampala. And of course this is not just people in Mastiko, but also beyond, the people that have been using that road. That was after a heavy downpour across the area, causing River Katonga to burst its banks, and of course the water had to overflow and sweeping off parts of the road. Well, there are also a lot of extremities happening across the country, and we're seeing that the president is really paying attention, saying that this is something that should be addressed, and to make sure that Ugandans are safe amidst all these extreme weather events. But also looking at what is happening, I think the crisis is not over when it comes to the expired degrees. Now, yesterday we did see administration coming up in terms of the students' body, that is the UNSA, coming up to say, no, we are not going to allow this. First of all, every year we have been paying about 20,000 shillings towards this Uganda Council of Higher Education. Now, how do they tell us that they didn't even have funding to actually do some of these processes? That was from also the guild presidents of Makerere University as well as Chambogo University, saying we need explanations, and they have given them up to 14 days to come up with the answers, and that is from the Council of Higher Education, saying we need answers. We need to make sure that this process is reviewed, and probably an update on that list, because they don't believe that all these programs are actually expired. Well, a lot to dissect this morning, but I will bring in the gentlemen here to see what they have also been.
Here, everybody has a degree of something, but the most important qualification is imagination. Her reason to imagine is slay. His reason is to be the goat. Theirs is to take the beat and make it lit. They want to test edgy until it is fire. Their reason for imagination is to add riz in style. Her reason to imagine is finesse. And hers is to find what's new and bussin'. So no matter what your situation, just use your imagination.
The Magical Egypt Tour 2023 is here. A heavenly miracle waiting across the natural and divine attractions of Egypt, such as Cairo, Giza Pyramids, Saqqara, Memphis, and many more that will offer the gift of a lifetime. The chance to unlock all of the hidden powers of mind and soul, gain the enlightenment of the past and the future, and develop the power of healing. Departure will be Friday 16th up to 23rd June 2023. Basic package starting at $1,200, 8 days and 7 nights. To register, come to Gotove Tours and Travel at Nalkwago Complex Suta, UG Extender, George Street, Nakasero, or call +256 758 530 059 or +256 784 568 392 or WhatsApp +256 782 556 078. Only few slots are left. Powered by UBC Television.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala. This is Good Morning Uganda.
Well, thank you so much for continuing to keep with us here. And if you're just joining us, this is the newsreel for this morning. Now, this morning we are talking about issues of freedom of speech. When we talk about that, it encompasses a lot of things. Are you able to bring out information that actually has a relevance to the nation or to your audience or to whoever you're talking to? And at that point, does it matter how you're getting the information? How are those regulations? But also majorly, we know that this concerns the press. Now that will take in journalists, and recently we've also had a lot of challenges, especially when it comes to digital media. Everyone now is able to pass on information throughout social networks, but when it comes to professionalism, how is that done? And of course, in the whole process of making sure that you're able to inform people, there are challenges that come with it. If the freedom is violated, or if some rights of journalists are not respected. Now, we're hailing from that. Look at some of the cases that have been reported in the past about, journalists that have not been able to carry out their jobs well because of some of these challenges. And we'll be looking into some of those and what it takes to actually have that neutrality and talk about a freedom of speech in this country, but also beyond, looking at a global view on how this should be done. And I'm not alone. I want to bring the gentlemen here to see how they are looking at it. And Felix, I'll start with you. We're talking about freedom of speech, but also looking at journalism as a profession. What have we achieved? And when we talk about that, how have we made sure that journalists are actually having that extra professionalism that is, attached to them in regard to, looking at how information is being passed out recently, digitally, and of course, across other platforms?
Well, there are quite a number of aspects you may want to appreciate as you look at this concept of press freedoms, let alone human rights that is engulfed in how this is exhibited or practiced as a matter of fact. And if you are to take it from the statistics that were released, I think yesterday, if I'm not mistaken, some of them are quite worrying, and seemingly the interpretation we get is that there's been a juxtaposition of looking at the fourth estate as rather a threat than an opportunity for governance. And that's why you get to a point where you ask such a question about freedom of speech, how it is appreciated. The same is evidenced in other things we see on a daily. I think if you're keen to follow the news, you've noticed that many a times we have had beating of journalists. I don't know if you remember that very gruesome, quite unsightly event that did happen somewhere near the offices of the United Nations, somewhere in Kololo, if I'm not mistaken, you have seen in many times when you are riots, when there are all these heated up confrontations between the coercive forces, who's caught in between there? Majorly they are these colleagues of ours who are journalists. When you talk about the freedom, press freedom, a day we did celebrate a couple of days ago, weeks if not mistaken, but for us the human rights that engulfs within is equally important, and that's why we come back to have such a discussion. Yesterday's report also did give light to a number of other things that if you were to conceptualize them, you would be worried about the practice of journalism. One, let's look at the audience and how they appreciate this kind of professionalism. Let's look at the practitioners, the people, the would-be affected people, or the journalists for that matter. People who have been in this practice for some time. Bobia will tell you some of the challenges he used to face as a foot soldier. But some of those challenges, are they cast because of the journalists being the problem? And that's been the question time and again. When you ask, who is the problem? Is it the journalist? Is it what they're reporting, or the person they're reporting about? Where is the fear? Is the fear about the journalist, what they're reporting, or who they are reporting about? That makes them become the target for human rights abuse. Some people have been threatened. There are many cases. Others have been battered. Others are still, I think we have a number of them who are already crippled. It's a case of a gentleman who was beaten in one gear. Then I think you remember up to now, I think he's still in a wheelchair. And just to mention but a few scenarios that have happened. That's the need for us to have such discussions continuously. Because if we don't protect people in our own fraternity, or if we don't talk about such gruesome encroachments on the rights of people who are in the fourth estate, who will have these discussions if we don't create these platforms? Okay, so that's the relevance of why we have to come out continuously to be able to sound the drums about the human rights appreciation for journalists. There's something also that causes baffling when we discuss rights, and generally, as a matter of fact, when you go to the Constitution, Chapter 4 of the Constitution does conclusively appreciate some of the mandated aspects of human dignity. One, the right to life, the right to free speech. Free speech, you know, there are some rights in the Constitution that upon which others depend. For example, when they say the right to life, it is as good as useless to tell you that you have the right to speech or freedom of expression when you're not alive. I don't think the dead speak, unless you come to the superstitions of some of the people in our village who have told us there are people who come back, ghosts and what, but we, at least scientifically, we don't know that. So some rights depend on others. One, let's first protect the lives of journalists. For example, there's a slogan people say, and I know Robert would know that, your microphone is your gun or something. There's something like that I read on it. Like they can't use any other weapon. For them, that's their weapon. And between you and me, you know the effect of press, whether bad or good. So when we talk about all these things, Mollen and Robert, we're trying to bring into context the challenges journalists face, but we must make alive and known, because without that, we'll not get solutions. The statistics are quite worrying. We were discussing them earlier with a colleague. And when you look at, there's some news people tell you, me, I'm not going to. It's that bad that when it comes to some aspect of reporting, they tell you, no. Because now, for example, look at the most recent gun violence we are experiencing in the country. There are many stories people will tell you, it's about what? No. Now, does that fulfill the mandate of media? As I've told you, in between any clash, the person in between the middle there is the media. For example, what's happening in Katonga, none of you, I don't know any of you has been there, but every day you have a report. Every day. How do you think that happens? So there's need for us to continuously kind of beating these sounds, drumming these big statements about the protection of journalists, the media, the fourth estate. Because if there's an attack on the media, trust me, the nation will be crumbling. If people can't access information in its right form, it should be worrying. If the people who should be delivering this are actually not being given a protection they need, rather even later on, most painfully, by the people who should be protecting them. When you run some of the videos of the attacks on some of the media personalities or press people or personalities, they are done by coercive forces. One of the most fresh scenarios is that we have given you, that was in somewhere in Kololo, when you saw the armed forces leech most of these people, and innocent people, you saw young practitioners, girls, and So some of these things, that's why we continuously come and have discussions, and not in the alludeness of or the absence of knowledge of whatever is happening in the country, but the media, the fourth estate, must stay stable and non-stumbling to perform its latter existence.
Absolutely, and you look at the fact that, of course, now the media is the medium to bring out those stories that people are not aware of, or even have a question mark on, because at least there is trust there. Someone will be watching UBC and they know for sure that this is where they should get the right information. They will even choose to ignore information that they're getting from all over other platforms because they know they have a trusted source. And that plays a key role. And that is also earlier what we were celebrating, that is on May 3rd, when talking about World Press Freedom Day. And I did see a lot of media organizations also come out to actually talk about what they were looking at for the future of media. And of course, with the theme that was put across, that is protecting freedom of expression in Uganda, and as the drive of other human rights. And that is where I want to also bring in Robert. When we're talking about protecting that freedom of expression here, we have seen all these instances and all those circumstances that Felix did talk about earlier as well. Where are we going wrong? Some of the organizations that are supposed to make sure that there is that freedom or there is protection, we have also seen instances where the police itself has been involved in such scandals. The people that we feel in any incident should be able to know that the media, this is a neutral part of whatever is happening, they should let be. But some of those have failed. What do we do? What is happening there?
Well, I'm happy today that we are discussing this. Why? Because journalists, we fight for many people's rights, but most of the times we forget our very own, us, ourselves. No wonder we don't want to be part of the story, just want to tell the story. But Uganda's case is a bit unique when we look at a number of countries, because we seem to have achieved some level of civility. But unfortunately, when we come to freedom of press and expression, now we are talking about journalists, people who are working for media houses or giving stories to media houses, because with social media, everyone almost has become a journalist. But we are talking about those that are recognized, either they are freelancers or they have specific media houses and they bring out stories. Now, about three phrases that in my time of career I always put very, very important. One, there is no story worth your life. When I was a young journalist, right from university, came to UBC, I was assigned a duty of specifically handling crime. That was my beat in journalism. Understand that you're a specialist in that area. That's why I'm usually very passionate about that. And it meant every riot, I had to be there. Every maybe gun shooting that has happened, I had to be the first person who my editor would ask, where is this story, Robert? I sustained a beatings, bit of being admitted, but I learned, one, that there is no story worth your life. Two, I learned that the pen is mightier than the sword. You see, something someone writes and publishes has a far-reaching impact. No wonder, last week we hosted in Good Morning Uganda Agenda, the army spokesperson. And he said that, you see, media is more powerful. I don't know, army weapons. He mentioned some huge weapon is it battalion of what? But media still remains very powerful. Now, where are we going wrong if we are to look at this report? Because according to the report that was released yesterday, we had gadgets confiscated. According to this report, were 4. Journalists threatened were 3. Now, when we come to assault cases of journalists, there were 30. We come to arrest cases, 22 journalists. We come to damage of equipment, 15. Blocked access, 10. And these could be the ones that made it to the press, to the captures of this report. Most so Uganda, that is most so Uganda Journalists Association. Now, when Mollen, you ask, where are we going wrong? The issue is, first, let's all accept everyone wants to be in media for good reasons, isn't it? If your child performed well, PLE, you want, and the name has been captured, you even call friends. Tune to UBC, Good Morning Uganda. They're going to talk about, you let everybody know for good reasons. No one wants to be in the media for bad reasons. I'm only told some artists and celebrities are here, but majority of organizations, institutions, individuals want to be in the media for good reasons. So most of these clashes we have seen are because there is something wrong happening. And the journalists want to tell the story of what is happening. Because we are simply messengers taking a message. And you should not condemn or hurt or kill a messenger. He's just, because if there is no brutality expressed by police, no journalist will forge images, join them and say there was, today at Old Kampala, police has manhandled people and this is what happened. We don't forge stories. We tell stories. So the problem comes when the stories we are telling, in terms of image, they are not so good for these institutions. So this is where the clash comes from. Someone tries to protect this. That is why you see gadgets of stories of confiscating gadgets. That a security officer will come to your police, army, what, and they get that camera. They get it. Because they know if they leave you with that camera, if they don't know how to operate, some will tell you, give us a click, give us this, and then they leave you with your gadget. But if you find those that have no knowledge for it, they will take it. Because they fear that what you've captured, you're going to let it out.
And they will be incriminated.
And they will be incriminated.
Yeah.
In my times, I remember one time Kiza Besigye was returning back from which, I don't even remember the country. Then the other incident was, I think it was former president of Nigeria when his convoy was stoned, something like that. I want to tell you, any of the journalists that covered that incident will tell a lifetime story. Gadgets were confiscated, they were made, because there's something that they don't want to show. Now, act well. We won't have these negative stories. Though, I must also be quick to add that even within the journalist fraternity, there could be some who may not be professional enough or have personal intentions. There are many that come into journalism fraternity and they have come to make fame for political offices.
Yeah.
So even if you look at what they cover, how they do things, they are not professional at all. They put themselves in harm's way.
Or even the way they put these stories. You could
Even
be writing a story, yes, and then it's kind of inciting
I've seen some
other scenarios, which is why it's worrying.
I am a journalist, but I've seen some journalists who get footage from other countries, apply it, bad footage, in their stories. Maybe because they never got, and you find all reasons why did he have to do this.
That becomes misinformation right there.
Misinformation. I've seen some of our colleagues who begin hitting government, going to extreme levels because they know that when they do that and a political year comes and they stand, they will get votes. So there are those incidents. But on a large scale, most of these conflicts we've had with security forces, one, there is lack of training. For security personnel to understand that today the Kirabo you're beating, because he has captured you, tomorrow is the Kirabo you're going to run to. When you have welfare things and all that, because you need these out of the media.
Yes.
You need these to be brought out.
Yeah.
So we need more training. Then, briefly, allow me also say this. Even media houses have some challenges, and police too. One, in the days of General Kale Kaihura and Minister Nabakoba was then the police spokesperson, we proposed and said, in this era, let media houses bring specific journalists to undergo training on how to cover some of these extreme situations. Let them produce that so that we know that this one covers this bit. They are trained on how to protect yourself first.
Yeah.
Because some of these incidents just ignorantly put themselves in harm's way, not knowing. Some of them have poor gadgets, that for you to get that voice, get that clip, you must be so close to the scene. I remember covering some of this, and the BBC journalist would be around here and is getting something in Serena. For us by then, you have to be around Serena. This man has a camera, zooms a bit, gets quality footage, picks sound. For you, you have to be closer where it is.
Clearly, it takes a lot of effort to get
it.
that good story, and,
Yes.
and some of them,
So,
it's just inevitable
but
sometimes.
also lack of training.
Yeah.
You know, some of these extreme cases need someone who knows, how do I capture the story, yet I stay safe?
Well,
So the journalists must also be trained on, that's why when you go to the international medias, go to BBC, go to Al Jazeera, go to CNN, you'll find they have specific journalists that cover specific incidents. These guys have been trained. These guys have the right gadgets. They have the right identification gadgets. Even sometimes they are known to the commanders.
Yeah.
During our days, Grace Riagumanawe, who would know you, even when you would appear at the scene, they know you're not among the rioters. You went through a training of how to cover crime. You know how to protect yourself. And they would even tell you, Robert, this side. And we knew. Today, see young, excited. Sometimes they tell them, no, we are going to operate from here. Be this side, get your stories. No, we are the press. You can't deny us. We are professionals. We are the fourth estate. We should value ourselves, that when you are at a scene and it is known. Yeah. So security forces need information on who the press are and how to protect them in terms of training. But even media houses need to avail the equipment, need to train these journalists, need to ensure there is a way they work in tandem with these security organizations, so that the journalists are not part of the stories they cover. You find a journalist you've gone to cover also holding placards. But now what is happening?
Well, clearly there is need to actually stick to professionalism, but we also have to recognize that sometimes it has to take that extra effort to get a story, and of course using the available tools that you have, the available equipment that you have. But then again, we find that with that effort comes with the challenge of now bringing in all these violences we are talking about, and obviously we're still going to emphasize for protection of freedom of speech and of course freedom of expression, and that has been recognized. We have seen a lot of organizations or associations coming up, and I think hugely we've also seen the National Association of Broadcasters here in Uganda come out to address some of those issues. But not just that, we've also seen some of the centers like African Center for Media Excellence, and of course when we talk about international level, this has also been recognized, that is by the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, and that was under Article 19 that talks about human rights committee, stating in general comments, that is the quote number 34, when it comes to the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, saying that the press freedom is a cornerstone of any democratic society, and therefore a free, uncensored and unhindered press or other media is essential in any society to ensure freedom of opinion and expression. Now, we see that this actually has a stem of origin. But why is it that we continue to see injustice, especially when it comes to the aftermath? There are incidences that happen. We see journalists that have been violated, human rights that have been violated, but in turn, we don't see enough justice coming up. And is this failure of, the law protecting journalists, or the Human Rights Commission itself, or who is supposed to be giving us, at least streamlining that, knowing that a certain individual in security forces, because we're not going to say it's the entire organ. These are individuals. They have been caught violating rights of journalists and press. But the justice there is not seen. Felix, what is happening? Why is it that we're not seeing enough when it comes to justice for some of these cases?
Depends on what we term as justice anyway. Because
because we're having repeated events, meaning that some of these individuals know that they can get away with it. And that's the problem right there.
Or maybe they are working in protection of a particular ideology. Because there are three aspects in a journalist's story. The reporter, there's an angle of the reporter, the person who's making the story, who has seen the story, let's say the journalist, they have their own angle. There's the actual, what actually happened, and the eventualities of such reporting. You know the effect of such reporting. We have seen some of the examples we have. We have the genocide in Rwanda. You saw the result of that. You've seen what's been happening in USA. You've seen also here in Uganda, you remember some of the issues of the Kavaka's riots. Kayunga.
Right.
All these I'm mentioning have you people, the journalists, of us who work in the media, as being key players. You saw what happened in elections 2021, if I'm not mistaken, November, when we had people go out on social media, say Uganda is on fire, Uganda is bleeding, they have burnt this petrol. You know all these things. Now, keeping those things in contemplation and in key context of national governance, you will want to not just look at the abuse against journalists, but entirely the broken fabric of practice in terms of media. Let's be honest. The media today is seemingly losing shape. I don't know if it's because of lack of regulation. I don't know if it's intentional. I don't know if it's because of the diluted practice in terms of journalism and media. You'll be shocked to understand that some of the events we see today, and as Robert did allude to much earlier, are not makings of forces. For example, let me give you a clear scenario that we have seen consistently here. You have some TV stations in Uganda today who have known that for them to get viewership, they will only do that when they attack government. And they are known to many viewers. Even matters of reason and matters of being just objective, you'll find that they struggle with them. Okay? Now, there's something called content creation. Journalists don't want to have that discussion. We want to make people think that journalism is just about holding a camera and going where there's a riot, where there's a police, where there's an opposition leader walking. That's not the end of journalism. That's not the end of journalism. But the reason why it is the highest peak lately is because of cheap popularity, the finances, and personal interests, sentiments, sensationalizing the media. Because today, in most of the TV programs you see on various radios and television, you can imagine people who are, let's say, who carry out some of the programs have consistently been, someone comes out and says, me, for example, I am NRM. But that person, how do you expect a fair discussion for a person who's hosting a TV show, radio show, and they're already politically leaning towards. Now, some people have used journalists or journalism media platforms for party political interests. That's why you see some of these things happen. A media person holding a camera will run to an event to report because they have been sent by a media house leaning to another political party. So there's what we call bias reporting. And this is something we asked yesterday that, okay, all these things are happening. Do we ever get to know the other stories? Or we only get to listen to journalists because they're the ones who own the microphones and the cameras? And the second question is, what do we stand to lose? We're not trying to justify some of these, but there are things we must discuss generally as the fraternity to make this environment much better for us to practice. Secondly, there's an aspect called content creation that no one wants to have a discussion about. Media and journalism is not about the 7 p.m. bulletin, the midday, and it's normally 9 or 10 p.m. That's not the end and the beginning of journalism. You have worked with institutions like BBC, CNN, the Al Jazeeras of this world. There's something that, and the reason why you see that one part of media is packed with almost every person wants to, because they are shy to challenge themselves with the other. Now, because of the friction that happens, there's a lot of stampeding in this one position, reporting about current affairs. That's why some of these things happen. But let's also ask a question. Have we seen any apprehension of errant journalists? You can tell me, Robert, for the time you've been around in this practice. Do we have that body? Because if we are not doing it, someone else is doing it for us. But if we were doing it, we would refer. The reason why there are so many gaps in the organization of the institutions of journalists and people in media, there's a lot of disorganization and subscription and belief. Even when you go to some of these institutions like UJA, you see a lot of politicking. People use them as stepping stones. The most previous.
Actually, one of the biggest challenges today, and the problem is people in the media are seeing it as an opportunity. The space that they have, we all aim at improving ourselves, fine. But many have abused this space for personal interests. And even that's why you see that we've failed to come up with a formidable, strong organization, because there's been so much infiltration of politics. Today, you will find that many of the people will use the opportunity they have to drive political agendas. You're supposed to be non-partisan in your work. You're supposed to be objective.
But you can't be objective when you already have even positions.
Yeah.
In
But people will tell you.
When the politics get involved,
No, you
it
see,
becomes a different story.
Definitely.
That is the biggest problem. And we are not addressing it as members of this fraternity because we stand to benefit from the abuse of our profession.
And Robert, just to add on what you're saying, that when you go out there to cover a story, yet you have been identified as a politician, and not that there's nothing wrong with being having a political choice or whatever, but you're going there not as a reporter, and even the person you're going to report about, or they are seeing you as an opponent, no longer now as a media personality. Yeah. In this country, you know, stations or media houses that have journalists who seemingly are bigger than the TV stations. And when they get on air, the things they say, how they say them, clearly, it is hard to protect, it is hard to call upon, because for them their agenda is no longer informative. It is not, it is rather criminalizing some of, and you see, every time you don't create space to have an open discussion about, to listen to each other, it kills the fabric of of reporting and journalism. So I think for me, if you want my last shot on this one, there's need for us to rearrange the house for some of you who are in this fraternity. Human rights abuse, yes, we cannot deny there's been quite an attack on the microphone, people who hold the microphone and the cameras, and that is evident. It is in body light, the statistics are clear, the videos are out there, but also it starts with the failure of the media personalities, the media practitioners to organize themselves into some sensible existence. I've given you one of the biggest challenges. What are the apprehension measures for the people who abuse the practices? Because if we can't do that for yourselves, or if you can't do that for yourselves in-house, someone else is going to do that.
Well,
for example, who gets to have a platform to report? Who gets to be on people's screens? Who gets to be in people's phones? So
well,
all
we
these
can
challenges.
talk about individual brands also not recognizing their role, and obviously that will drag in the entire media organization. But again, brutality is brutality, and we condone that. But we also, that adds a voice. From the report that is yesterday, we did see the Uganda Human Rights Commission member, that is retired Colonel Stephen Basaliza, who has also condemned brutality by security officers against journalists, and promised thorough investigations with strict punishment for the perpetrators, of course saying this at the launch of the Press Freedom Index that was in Bukoto, Kampala. We continue to ask that most of these security organizations also do prepare their personnel to be able to understand what we talk about when we are talking of press freedom. And obviously, we also do have a lot of stories that are coming across in today's dailies, and we'll be looking at some of those. Look at what stories you can catch up for today. I have the New Vision right here. Top story being MPs okay tracking devices for all cars and border borders. That is one that has been, I think a lot of people are not looking forward to. So that is a story for you, how the system will work. Implementation starts with Kampala. And in another story, government gives varsities deadline to submit revised programs. Well, that's some kind of good news right there. But also the big picture right there, Museveni issues new directives on PDM cash. And of course, they show you a picture of His Excellency right there. And the officials also involved. In security, Ochola suspends 30 private security firms. And also government withdraws pension bills. Iron sheets a story right there as well, as MPs recommend a prosecution of ministers. And moving on to the Daily Monitor, Felix, what do we have?
Now we'll be looking at how expired degrees have broken dreams. MPs reports fail to nail majority of ministers on iron sheet saga. Angola guard finally buried at his village, and why budgeting is important in construction. Now the best exam questions pull out is also in this paper as well.
Crossing over to the Daily Nation, who owns Jubilee? That's the big headline right there in the paper. President Ruto recognizes Sabina Chege as my fellow party leader. Azmiro's Odinga warns him to keep off his camp. Oh, quite interesting right there. And of course, they give you the confusion galore. Well, as former president goes at it. And a lot of stories in there as well. Ruto nominates Mary Chebukati as the Revenue Commission chairperson. And a lot of controversy right there. All small businesses must join trade lobby or fold. That is a warning from Korea right there. And more stories in the Daily Nation. Looking at the Citizen as well, and one of the stories right there, Samia address these issues at law courts, and they give you a picture of the president right there. What pact with Morocco fertilizer company means, And of course, also talking about WB ranks Dar Port highly amid privatization calls. How government plans to boost mining GDP contribution to the 10-pack before 2025. Grooming a new generation of readers and leaders. All those stories are valuable for you across most of these papers right there. All you have to do is get yourself a copy and you're able to catch up with some of these stories. Now, that does it for now. We'll be going in for the traffic updates, the weather. Later than that, we'll also be taking you through Good Morning Uganda agenda, where we'll have more discussion on the topics that actually concern you and all of us. For now, we'll take a short break and we get back after that. Good morning.
This is a quick call. I'm almost out of minutes. Now, the center.
Why rush through such important conversations? Airtel Uganda has made it possible for you to call across all networks in Uganda at the best rates with the new Bona voice bundles. Stay connected anytime, anywhere, with minutes valid for calls on all networks. Dial star 100 star 1 hash. Select voice bundles and select Bona voice bundles today.
Airtel, a reason to imagine.
naye ddala oyagala kuba akinga okuze kuvuga ennyonyi okakasa gwe kayongo ovuga ennyonyi usemesa kuvuga ennyonyi
Uganda Aviation Expo 2023 mwoleso gwa nnyonyi nga guli ku kisaawe Entebbe. Leta abaana balabe bayige ku misomo gy'ebyennyonyi nawe omusubuzi omutambuze oba oyagala okulambula Uganda jangu okuyingira shinja emitwalo 5 ennyonyi ya mitwalo 2 ate mwe abagala VIP emitwalo 30 basi zino zidabodeka za kubanona ku City Square ebusega ku Express Highway ne Nambole obutasukka sawa 7 otambulira bwerere amasomero agayigiriza abaana ebyennyonyi muleta abayizi mu Uganda Aviation Expo 2023 wali Entebbe ku kisaawe okuva nga 22 paka nga 24 June.
Pick of the day on UBC. Objective and non-partisan.
Honorable Minister, there were a number of points. I want to start with you.
Straight from the hearts of open-minded men and women.
Money tends to move faster at night. So when people are not counting,
don't take it for granted.
Candid and authentic.
Because Uganda is not Thailand.
That's not correct, and we should stop that kind of mentality. So what I'm saying
is
that's
a trick question. Don't answer.
I'm not getting into that. I'm not getting into that.
Tell him you speak low.
I think that's where we are beginning to have a problem.
Was brought to you by
Gatawo with MTN Momo Advance. Momo Advance tops up your Momo to complete your transactions. Dial star 165 star 5 star 3 hash to apply. MTN Momo Advance is always available when you need it.
Ojja kumpa irisiti tompa bidala irisiti ojja kumpa irisiti tompa bidala mpa irisiti yange. That's right, insist on getting your e-receipt. It's your ticket to fantastic prizes including motorbikes, laptops, fridges and a fully paid 6-day safari for 2 in Uganda. Take a picture of your e-receipt, upload it to the URA website or mobile app and you could be the lucky winner. The more receipts you upload, the higher your chances of winning. Terms and conditions apply. More details on our social media channels.
Uganda Revenue Authority. Developing Uganda together.
For 10 years, the Uganda Film Festival has been shining a light on Ugandan cinema. This year, we're celebrating a decade of excellence in filmmaking, innovation, and storytelling. Get ready for a week of physical and online workshops, masterclasses, and film clinics with some of the most experienced film experts in the business. Experience the magic of cinema with a diverse lineup of films from Uganda, Africa, and beyond. The festival runs from the 22nd of May to the 2nd of June 2023 and culminates with the Awards Gala, a glittering event that recognizes and honors the best in Ugandan cinema.
number of community members out there that have formed themselves into groups and have identified enterprises, agricultural enterprises, rice and all that, and they've actually been successfully cultivating them. They've gone ahead, the project has gone ahead and also introduced small-scale industries like the rice huller, the grinding mills and all that that are managed by the groups. All these are successes.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala. This is Good Morning Uganda.
But it is Good Morning Uganda. Right now we want to take you to the roads and look at how the traffic is looking like. We'll be looking at areas of Zambia, some of the roads connecting into town, and of course coming in from Entebbe as well, how the traffic is looking like. Now we do have Lukuli Road this morning. It has clear traffic. That is all the way from that is the Makindye side as well. If you're joining in into Zambia using that road, it looks like that also actually has clear traffic. Muyenga Tanki Road, that is joining in towards Gaba Road as well. We have clear traffic right there. We do have a bit of traffic building up on the junction from Muyenga Road joining into Gaba Road. That's where we have a little bit of intensity indicated by the orange and red lines over there. But then again, after that junction, it actually gets clear, continuing with Gaba Road towards a town as well. Now also on Zambia Road, you have just a few distances, that is in Zambia Estate Road, with a bit of traffic, but again, most of that road is actually clear to use this morning. You look at some of the connecting areas, Henlon Road as well does have clear traffic for this morning. That should be okay to use as you join into town this morning. Now also that is looking at the junction from that is Gaba Road in Henlon Road. The connection right there is where we have a bit of traffic building up, and that is one that you could you have to be aware of. There's also a little bit of construction work going on around there, so you need to be aware of this kind of traffic. But also coming in with Entebbe Road, you look at the connecting area right from Chibuye. That's where you have a bit of traffic in that roundabout. Coming in from, you have the Market Road down the side of Chibuye, coming in from Entebbe Road and Makindye. So that builds up right there. But then after the roundabout, you do have the roads moving in quite clear, looking at Queensway as well. And that should lead you into central town. Now away from that, we'll also be looking at the weather updates for this morning. We'll be tapping in from our satellites, looking at what we have this morning in terms of our skies. We did start off with a few rains that is over the Lake Victoria Basin, and much of that is still over there. We're looking at the islands of Lake Victoria. That is where we do have a bit of rains even now. That is from the sides of Kalangala. That system is still extending towards areas of Entebbe. That is indicated by the yellow colors right there on the map in green. And it looks to be heading westward, so we do expect that those rains will be going for areas of Masaka as well. Could be having quite a rainy one for this morning. Otherwise, the rest of the country has started off with mostly a mix of clouds and sunshine. Now more clouds developing for the Elgon region as well as the Lake Choga region. We're looking at northwestern Uganda as well as the midwestern part of the country and the Rwenzori area right from Fort Portal. We're looking at areas of Kasese as well. We have a few clouds building up over there, and quite a sunny one starting off for southwestern Uganda, Mbarara, Kabale, Kisoro. We're looking at mostly a sunny morning for you. Hoima as well. We do have clouds that have started to dissipate over that area, clearing off for mostly sunny intervals. And the northern part of the country as well, quite a sunny one. Similar weather for the eastern part of the country as well as the Karamoja region, Amuria, Padel, Moroto, Kotido. Also that extends towards areas of Soroti as well, starting off with quite a sunny one, and that extends to the eastern side of Lake Victoria as well. We're looking at Tororo, Jinja as well, starting off with quite a sunny one for this morning. We do expect that that might continue for much of today, except the southern area, where we do expect to have development of wet weather activities for mid-morning. That much of it will be crossing over into the afternoon, and as well parts of southwestern Uganda, where we do expect that we might have more rains developing for later on in the day. But also crossing borders, we want to look at what is happening, especially when we talk climate action. And there has been a big talk about how we move forward in terms of bringing in clean energy and, of course, moving away from fossil fuel. And that brings in a huge conversation about the cars that we're looking at. Now, the European Union has been at the top front when it comes to moving towards making sure that they have electric cars, and they have set deadlines before, but we're looking at how far members or member countries are pushing for this to happen. Now, one of the key issues that is being looked at is just a few days ago, we did see the EU come out to say they are pushing from 8 member documents to make sure that they have more countries that are coming in to join into the campaign of looking at electric cars. Now, France, Italy, and Czech Republic are among the 8 countries that are pushing to also look at EU limits cars, saying that they will be looking at overly ambitious and realistic goals with automakers, which means that among these members, you do have countries that feel this should not be a swift move. But yet they are the same countries that did say they are going to commit to make sure that they have electric cars, and even set a deadline for 2025 to ensure that all these cars are actually more electric. And of course, that is in a move to get away from the pollutants, including nitrogen oxides and carbon monoxide, that we know are also coming from these cars that use fossil fuels. Now, in a joint paper that was sent to the EU, that was on the 22nd of May, the 8 countries said that part of the law, including curbs on exhaust pipe emissions, should be scrapped off entirely. And of course, this is something that now oppose any new exhaust emission rules and requirements in the new emission limits. Now, for countries that are putting their concern, that includes Italy, you look at France, like I talked about earlier, Bulgaria, Hungary, Poland, and now that takes in new other countries like Romania and Slovakia. Now, they're saying that these limits would force car makers to invest in improving emission performance, and money that would be better spent on developing zero-emission vehicles. And of course, that does bring in a right course, because instead of investing in, less car exhaust emission for these cars, for new developers, how about you put all this money to put into zero-emission vehicles? And that's still the proposal right there. And they believe that the EU will come up to, harmonize before 2025, so that all of the countries, all the member countries, can move towards a common goal that is ensuring that there is zero emissions. But also that does coincide with the IPCC report that came out earlier this year, and that we're talking about the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. Now, that is IPCC. They are saying that unless we look at more measures to curb the emissions, or even more make conservation that is 30 to 50% of this earth, we could be looking at more unhealthy, more instances of unhealthy planets. Forget the extreme weather events that we're looking at, but we're looking at toxicity from the fresh waters, the ocean, and that will actually be giving us bad reports, especially now that we're trying to move towards, reducing emissions, but also on how far we can go when it comes to reducing the increase in temperatures. And of course, the report did also highlight that every region will face severe and frequent compound and, of course, cascading climate risks. We are already seeing these risks for individual countries, right from the drought crisis in Eastern Africa, and that continues across the Greater Horn of Africa as well. And this is simply what the IPCC is saying. They are looking at multiple and feasible, effective options to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and adapt to human-caused climate change. The adaptation will have to come with more costs, but also you're looking at mainstreaming effective and equitable climate action that will not only reduce losses and damages for nature and people, but also provide wider benefits. And this, of course, was highlighted in the SETHIS report that underscores the urgency for taking more ambitious action on climate change, and of course looking at highlighting the unprecedented scale of challenges that are required to keep the warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius. That is a goal that was set across by the Paris Agreement way back in 2015. But if you look at some of what has been happening, especially with exposure to extreme weather events, Africa right there, looking at 2.4 million people that have been affected by extreme weather events, and that is just 95% that is being looked at already being affected by the effects of climate change, already being faced with losses and damages. And obviously IPCC is a body that does come out with these scientific reports to guide countries on what to do in terms of climate action, but also to showcase how far we have gone and how the future is looking like. If projections are indicating that we might have more in terms of extreme weather events, how should countries prepare? And the hope is that whenever this report comes out, individual countries can take on the mantle and look at scaling up their action in terms of adapting to the changes in climate, but also look at ways of improving and conserving the planet to suit the available resources without depleting the nature. We'll leave it at that. We will be having Good Morning Uganda agenda right after this, and later than that we'll also be going for sports highlights, and at the top of the hour we'll take you through Good Morning Uganda Extra. My name is Mollen Kenyena. I want to wish you a wonderful one.
The Magical Egypt Tour 2023 is here. A heavenly miracle waiting across the natural and divine attractions of Egypt, such as Cairo, Giza Pyramids, Saqqara, Memphis, and many more that will offer the gift of a lifetime. The chance to unlock all of the hidden powers of mind and soul, gain the enlightenment of the past and the future, and develop the power of healing. Departure will be Friday 16th up to 23rd June 2023. Basic package starting at $1,200, 8 days and 7 nights. To register, come to Gotove Tours and Travel at Nalkwago Complex Suta, UG's Extender, George Street, Nakasero, or call +256 758 530 059 or +256 7